All right, so I was looking at helicopters today. Those of you who look at my Facebook from time to time, you're probably already aware I'm into helicopters. But there's a lady named Belle Delphine. Of course, that's not a Bell helicopter, but when you type it up, that's one of the things that pops up. And you touch the screen with your finger, at least you can do it on my computer, where you touch the screen and it does whatever. Well, if you don't touch it right, it does what it wants to. So there's this story about this lady, Belle Delphine or Delphine or something. And she's a pretty white girl. She was born in South Africa, and basically, she sells the idea of sex. And, you know, people got their own opinion of it. Some people think it's a horrible sin that she's doing. Some people think that, we should feel bad for her because, she's just a girl and it's tough to make money in this world. And, I don't care if she's female. I think that if it's okay for a woman, it should be okay for a man. If it's okay for a man, it should be okay for a woman. And that's very important to note. That's what equality is. Equality doesn't mean special rights just for you or special rights just for your group of people, but equal rights for all of us. Now, we don't have that here in the United States, and this Belle Delphine lady, she's not even in the US, she's in the UK apparently. But she makes about $1.2 million per month. That's a lot of money for being pretty and selling an image, of course. People's opinions do matter. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, that poor white girl, that poor girl, she's being exploited." No, she's exploiting herself. It's her body. Shouldn't she be allowed? Now, we've heard that argument through most of my life about abortion. But what if it's not abortion? What if there's no children involved? Should somebody be allowed to do that? What are the limits of what is acceptable as a sex worker? Should it be the same in every country? Should Great Britain have the same laws that we do? Well, if they have the same laws that we do, then which laws where? The ones here in Oregon, the ones in Nebraska, or the ones in Las Vegas? The other thing about that is, it's considered a sex worker isn't always just crack hose down on Colfax. Porn stars are also sex workers. There's a lot of people who are human trafficked that are sex workers. Not everybody is trafficked for sex, though. There's a lot of people who are trafficked for, well, a lot of different things. Human labor. Some of them are trafficked just to traffic them, which is kind of a weird thing for most people to wrap their heads around. But if you think about it, I mean, these people live in horrible conditions. A lot of them die in horrible conditions before they ever turn a profit. Basically, somebody bought them and then they fucking died. That person who bought them didn't make any money off of them, they fucking died. And a lot of y'all don't want to think about it. It interrupts your party. It interrupts your ability to go out and do your drugs and enjoy them. Man, I don't want to hear that Debbie Downer bullshit. Well, you know what? You not wanting to hear about it doesn't mean I'm going to shut up about it. I don't have to shut up about it. And a lot of people have tried to force me to shut up about it, and I won't fucking do it. And we got a lot of stuff going on in other places, not just Ukraine. And a lot of people are really, really standing up for Ukraine right now. You know, they're making a superhuman effort. Well, that's great. And there's countries in Europe that are taking Ukrainian refugees. I wonder if any of them would be willing to take American refugees. Because that's truly what the homeless are. The homeless to the United States are what the Ukrainians are to Russia. We're just cannon fodder. And it's a horrible thing to go through, and it costs you guys a lot of money, and it also guarantees that none of us are going to have a chance at an honest future. I mean, we're your go-to for blaming on everything. You know, it must be our fault that the economy's screwed up. Every time that you're told it's no longer legal for you to take it out on blacks and Mexicans, you take it out on us instead. Now, the friend that I came here to see, who ended up missing, I found her. That's a good thing. I'm going to try to help her out best I can. And I keep hearing about Ukraine. I'm going to tell you, I do feel bad for the Ukrainians. That doesn't erase the sins of the Ukrainians. But which Ukrainians committed those sins? When we go after people, we need to go after the individuals who are responsible, not everyone. See, that's the thing about the homeless here in the United States. If a homeless person, well, let's say a black person steals your tip jar, you're not allowed to kick out all black people. But if a homeless person steals your tip jar, you're allowed to kick out all homeless people. It's pretty bad. Everything is too expensive in the United States. There's too many expectations. And yes, immigrants to the United States are treated better than homeless people, unless those immigrants are homeless. I don't make as many videos as I used to, but I'm out on the road. I got a lot of stuff in here I got to work on, but it's an actual desktop computer that I'm working with and a bunch of paperwork. And I had a little bit of help from my sister, but she can't help anymore. She's too scared to do so. So I'm doing my best. I'm in Oregon. I'm helping to find people. And yeah, that's better than nothing. That's better than doing nothing. Oh, someone's getting pulled over. I don't know who it is. Doesn't look like anything too major. Apparently he had his lights off. So that was nice of him. Anyway, when it comes to Ukraine, I'd like to do something to help the Ukrainians out. Well, what can I do? There's stuff that I am able to do here in the United States. If you're able to do that shit for Ukrainians all the way over in Ukraine, you can do that shit for Americans. You can do that for American soldiers who are homeless. 1 in 10 homeless people are Americans or American, former American soldiers. Sorry, 1 in 8 are former American soldiers. 1 in 10 are combat veterans. Yep, 10% of the homeless. It's not easy. And a lot of my homeless friends who are, they're pretty gung ho. They're all about the United States. A lot of them, they're like, hey man, I was in the infantry, or I was in the Marine Corps, or I was this, or I was that, or I was an E3, or whatever. They want to talk about their days in the military and how this is the thanks that they get from their country and how this isn't what they fought for. When you listen to their stories, there's pretty much one conclusion that, comes forward from all of it. None of them knew what the fuck they were getting into. What they knew was mom and dad's rules under mom and dad's roof until they turned 18. And by the time they turned 18, they were enlisted. They signed up for military service. So right out of high school, off to boot camp they go. They don't know nothing but mommy and daddy's rules. They don't know what the United States is about. They haven't lived it. They've lived mommy and daddy's roof. Then they spend a few years in a few other countries shooting at people and they don't like it. And they come back to the States and they're all fucking suicidal because they've been fucking killing people and it ain't right and it grates on their conscience and they can't get the images out of their fucking heads. And then you punish them for it. They need a loving environment and people who try to understand, but they don't get that, do they? None of us do. Not for a combat veteran, not for somebody who's disabled, for certainly not for a male. A lot of times when I pick people to speak up, I pick pretty white girls. And I pick pretty white girls for a reason. You'll actually listen to a pretty white girl. A lot of the people that I've helped out, they're not pretty people. They're not. A lot of the people who came through for me, at least a little bit, they're not what you would consider pretty. And a lot of them complained that nobody ever listened to them. And yeah, I get it. Most people's reason for not coming forward was that nobody would listen to them. Nobody would listen to them. Nobody ever listens to them. Well, that fucking sucks. That's why you got to go in together. You have to work together. Otherwise, it don't work. When you have to go in by yourself, and there was a lot of people who I recorded on my YouTube channel here, their voices saying that they tried to contact the police and got blown off, or got told one excuse after another. No matter how they tried to turn it in, they were told it wasn't the right way. Or they were told to do it a certain way that other people had already told me that they had tried doing it that way, and the cops had told them to do it a different way. And of course, I've tried all these different ways. When you're trying to turn them in, you can't do it by yourself. You have to have somebody go in there with you who knows what's going on and is there for your safety, especially when they can play on your homelessness or call you mentally ill as their excuse for the crimes that they committed or for the fact that they just simply didn't do their fucking job. There's a lot of people who are fucking dead. A lot of them. Specifically over the situation with Natalie Bollinger. Specifically over the aftermath of that I still live to this day. And people say you should let it go. They don't see what it is that I have to live through every day. Or the fact that I have to be afraid to go different places because law enforcement in those places, well, they got my number. I don't mean my phone number. Going to the state of Colorado is decidedly unsafe. Going to the state of Washington is decidedly unsafe. Going to the state of Wyoming is decidedly unsafe. Going to the state of South Dakota is probably reasonably unsafe. Going to the state of Virginia, shit, I'd probably be safe if I went to Virginia, and that's a sad thing to say. Because I don't want to be anywhere near any of Natalie Bollinger's family. And here I am. Did some research about the area that I'm in, and pretty much this whole area was made by extinct volcanoes. Bunch of little mini volcanoes and micro volcanoes, and apparently Portland is the only city in America with a volcano in it. I don't know. I do know that Rebecca is alive. She's living in a tent in Oregon on the sidewalk in front of one of the churches. It's been raining a lot, of course. That's what it does here. You got to have a pretty special frame of mind living in a place like this where it rains so much. Otherwise, you get super depressed and pull yourself a Kurt Cobain. End up faceless. And then, of course, I'm a different person in real life than I am on my YouTube channel. People are like, man, you're always so pleasant. You got such good jokes. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know I'm a funny feller. I remember what jokes made me laugh, and I'll tell those jokes. I make a few of them up on my own. Mostly, though, I'm just witty. You say something, and I'm used to responding with something funny. That's how I made friends growing up, because I was moving around all the damn time. Now, right now, I'm letting my car run because my dumb ass left the lights on and my battery died. And some feller who didn't speak very good English helped me to jump start my car, so I'm just making sure that I got a charge on my battery. I got paid on the 1st, so I gotta. Well, first I gotta pay people back. There was a lady who sent me $100, and I'm trying to get her information so I can send her $100 back. Well, actually, she sent me 85, but it's like $8 to send it, and it'll cost me $8 to send it back. So altogether, it's about $100. Just a little bit over. And well, I was able to get my phone up and running. It's got everything it needs. It's got internet access too, no matter where I'm at. Now, I've been working on some helicopter rotor designs for a few years. I don't figure as an engine is even necessary in a helicopter. And I know that sounds crazy. Believe me, I do. And yeah, that does go in with what we're talking about here with everything in Ukraine and also the situation with delphine and all that. We all got something different going for us. All of us. There was a guy who was a burn victim in Boulder, Colorado, and he made about $300 to $400 a day panhandling. His face was pretty scarred up, so he literally did get paid for his looks, but not for looking pretty like Belle Delphine. Now, some of us, like me, I like mechanics. I like the way things work. I look at a lot of old Nazi stuff and a lot of old American stuff and a lot of old communist stuff and a lot of the Tsarist Russia stuff. I mean, when I study things, I like to learn as much as I can about them. When I got to learn about boats, I didn't just learn about European boats. I learned about the Chinese junk and the sampans, sampans, and of course, the turtle ship and things like that. We live in a modern world, though, and that's where a lot of my designs come in handy. With first of all, being able to work with natural materials, I can probably decently build a lightweight helicopter frame or body with plywood. I mean, as long as I get single veneer and fit it to shape and, basically do the whole monocoque thing. And that's a, we won't get into all these different production methods. It's not necessary. That's not what the video's about. But, with the helicopter rotor design that I made, it's an idea so that you don't have to have an actual engine inside your vehicle. The rotors themselves are engines. And I'm not talking about a pulse jet either. I'm talking about an actual jet engine. That's the thing about the exterior, the outside of the rotors going as fast as they do. When you're in the very center, let's find something we can use. Here's the lid. All right. So if we look at this here and we look at the little dots on it, as we turn it, those little dots turn pretty quick. Now they're all turning on the very center here. Closest to the center, it's not moving nearly as fast as it is around the outside. See, because one rotation here takes the same amount of time to go around as one rotation on the outside. But this is covering less distance in that amount of time. This is covering more distance in the same amount of time. So on the exterior, basically what you've got is forced air induction. On the very outside of basically your rotor is a wing. On the very outside of the wing, you've got a scoop where the forced air being forced into it is gonna, of course, it's compressed. When it gets to the area of the rotor hub, that's where you've got a lot of the other stuff going on that you need going on, like combustion. But then there's also a lot of the math that goes into it. You can't just put it together and expect it to work perfectly. And for me, I always wanted to get the hell out of here. I always wanted to get away from violent-minded people who could always do whatever they wanted to me and then play victim. Or bully me and bully me and bully me until I go completely fucking nuts. I wanted to go out on the ocean and I wanted to figure out a way to run a boat off of the ocean water. I found out that about 100 feet underwater, you don't get affected by the waves on top anymore, no matter how big they are. So I thought to myself, if I could make a vehicle that was lightweight and strong, something that's lightweight enough that it can fly if it really needs to. If it's not able to fly, I want to be able to dive in it to at least 100 feet. I'd like to be able to sail on it because I don't ever want to have to encounter human beings if I don't need to. And of course, I got to be able to grow food on there. You can't live on fish alone. You got to have supplies. And I figured out how to do that with plastic bottles and a system called rotomolding. I even designed a special brick. Well, it's a couple of pieces actually. It's a brick and a connector. But it's basically just the connector is a four-way dovetail groove, and you're able to take these rotomolded plastic bricks and attach them together, kind of like Legos. I mean, they're not fastened the same way, but this is all the stuff that I was working on before Natalie was killed. I was trying to make an ejectable cockpit too. I figured that'd be a good idea. I call it a supersonic ejection seat because that's basically what it's for. I was watching a channel where they were showing about how pilots, when they eject at supersonic speeds, it usually kills them. If not, it fucks them up real good. Like, it can literally tear your arm off of your body. And, you're getting 1,000 miles an hour wind right into your face, basically, as soon as you eject. There's an explosion, and then you're forced out the top of the canopy, and that explosion basically breaks the glass. It breaks out the top canopy. Now that's pretty dangerous in itself. But if you were able to have the controls, so that basically the cockpit was just basically a seat with a parachute and a fan on the back, you could make it so that you've got, and this is an idea that I had to try to stabilize it, because as soon as you separate the two airframes, the actual airplane itself, and then you've got the cockpit, of course. When you separate the cockpit from the airframe, you're going to have some suction there, first of all, when you're at the high speeds. But once you're able to start separating, and you've got that air that's forced in between the two airframes, your ship is going to want to wobble, and you're going to want to make sure that you don't stay wobbly. So you basically use the idea of a Kleenex box. You've got the Kleenex, right? And you pull one out. It takes a little bit of tension to pull it out, but once you pull it out, it pulls out the next one. And you pull it out, and it pulls out the next one. And you pull it out, and it pulls out the next one. Well, if you can do that with some parachutes, some drag chutes, just a whole bunch of little ones, and have them so that they break away. Once they get, because basically, if you're going that fast, if you slow down too quickly, then it's going to kill you. It's basically going to crush you in reverse, back to front. It's going to crush you against your harness, basically your equivalent of a safety belt. So what you want to do is you want to have them just big enough to where they're going to create drag to help to stabilize you when you separate. You want to make it so that you don't go all wonky and get into a flat spin and twist up your main chute, because basically at that point you're becoming a paraglider. Once you've stabilized, you drop your main chute pops out, and then you can allow your fan to basically duct you to wherever you need to go. Now, we've got these things already. We've got gyrocopters, we've got paragliders, we've got paracopters, we've got parasails, we've got all sorts of different stuff that, is already right up this alley. It already exists. It's not like I'm talking about any brand new technology that we don't have the capability of creating. We've already got stuff that is meant to launch while at supersonic speeds, and the Russians have definitely been working on that. So if you're able to launch a missile at supersonic speeds, or at least the Russians are able to, if they're able to do that, you should be able to stabilize a pilot who has to eject at supersonic speeds. I'd rather the pilot who's got a Russian missile chasing him, I'd rather have him be able to eject safely going, 12 to 1,500 miles per hour, as opposed to getting smacked with a fucking missile and dying. I'd also like it so that if they do get hit and they are going down, they can get the fuck out without dying. I mean, if your vehicle is in a flat spin and you're able to eject your cockpit in a flat spin, and your cockpit has those basically the tissue parachutes, is what we could call them. Those would still stabilize the main airframe, your main airframe, because that cockpit in itself is your airframe. You can also make it so that the cockpit itself is in the shape of a what's called a lifting body. Now it's not like you're trying to do any special James Bond shit here. This is all stuff that we've already got basically the equivalent of in other industries or other places. It's not like it's something that we can't do. Now, why don't we focus on trying to make the world a better place? Why don't we focus on that? A lot of people, like that guy, what was it, yesterday, who wanted to tell me, you should stop looking for missing people. Why should I? Why should I stop doing what I feel is right? There's a reason that I care. And you telling me not to be me is not going to make me into somebody else. Now, most people's bias is based on ignorance, and the more we can teach them, the better off we'll be. With that Belle Delphine lady, she's got her looks, just like that guy who was a burn victim had his looks, and yeah, they utilize that to the best of their ability. And yes, sex does very much sell. There's a lot of sick bastards out there who are into little kids, and it's fucking gross. It's not something that any of us who are decent excuses for human beings, we don't want to be around that. But then there's people who try to make money off of that. And those are the ones that we need to work on trying to stop. I grew up in a shitty fucking system, being abused in horrible ways. People get abused by their parents in those ways, and that's just horrible to think. I've had people tell me that I'm lucky that I got molested in the system instead of by my parents. No, that's not fucking lucky. There is nothing lucky about that. Nothing at all. Not all people enjoy their jobs. That Belle Delphine lady, whether she likes her job or not, that is her job. She does make a lot of money doing it. If I could make that kind of money from showing off my nipples, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't. I don't know. You know, I've never been a pretty young woman, ever, in my entire life. If I had enough money to make myself into a pretty young woman, I wouldn't. I'm fine with my own skin. I don't have to be pretty to be a good person. I've also gotten to see that men are not the only ones who are superficial. People are superficial. People are selfish. When it comes to humanity and human traits, not all of our traits are good. Not all of our traits are bad. It's what you embrace. Now, whether that Belle Delphine lady is some sort of a terrible monster for doing what she is doing or not, she's not hurting me. Who is she hurting by doing this? I don't know anybody that she's hurting. So when I found her name earlier, and I was like, well, what's this about? It's some girl who's basically selling the image or idea of sex to make money. Okay. Well, if that's what she's into and that's what makes her money, fine. We've got plenty of people in the United States who profit off of people dying every day. We've got places in the United States that profit off of abducting people and locking them the fuck up and denying them their basic human rights. So, I mean, really, who am I to judge somebody for making all that money off of their looks? That is not to say that I cannot acknowledge the fact that I'm not going to make that kind of money off of my looks. If I try to sell my sexy image, yeah, I'm not going to get far. And that's one of the things that people don't want to acknowledge about bias. Yes, people will spend a lot of money for pretty. What do rich people spend their money on? Pretty things and making more money. If you're not rich, how do you get special exceptions? Well, if you're pretty, you could get yourself some special exceptions on how you're treated. Now, there's a lot of different colleges, a lot of different places around the world who have done studies about how males and females treat the opposite gender based on how they look, and it turns out that men and women are both fucking selfish. Men and women are both selfish. Men and women both go for looks. Both men and women. Now, we try to sell that women aren't as superficial as men, but yes, truly they are. Selfishness, self centeredness, and superficiality are not specific to a gender. These are specific to humans, these are human traits. To lie is a human trait. Some might say that that's the core of humanity is lies. Why can't we just live like the Native Americans did? Why can't we do that? We can focus our money and our time and our energy on actually feeding people. We can focus the important shit when we need electricity for something and it's important. It's stuff like hospitals. I believe if somebody works at a hospital, yes, everything in their life should be taken care of. That's my personal belief. If you are going to be in a system of public service, you need to be a public servant. We can't have any of these incentives like drug companies in the United States give, where doctors are pushed to sell drugs that a patient probably doesn't need, or to give diagnoses that are probably not true, but if you diagnose somebody with that, it adds to statistics and makes you look good. And of course, you got all these competitions going on between different doctors. Then, of course, you get doctors out in the middle of fucking nowhere. They're all the fucking C students. So, I mean, they're not shit for doctors to begin with. And this is all stuff people don't want to get an education on. People always want to judge, but they don't want to be judged back. Why can't you be happy for the young woman? If she's making $1.2 million a month for selling the image of sex, she's not even selling sex, just the idea of it. And she gets $1.2 million a month. I don't. Am I jealous? I guess that is one way to put it. I mean, yeah, I sure would like to be making $1.2 million a month. I could do a lot with that money. I could buy some property. I can get together some good, decent down home bodies and a few home bums, dig ourselves a Roman marching fort, and plop up our tents inside of it. A Roman marching fort is basically it's a ditch. You dig a ditch into a square, you throw the stuff that was in the ditch towards the inside of the square, then basically you've got a dirt wall and you put your tents up inside of it. You got a little bit of shelter from the elements. You're good to go. If I owned property, I would have done that already. It's what I was working on before Natalie was killed. There's also a lot of stuff that, even though it did happen, it doesn't excuse what's going on right now. The shit that's going on in Ukraine, a lot of the stuff that I've been saying about Ukraine in the past and also Russia, it's true. Even though it's not popular to say anything against what Ukraine has done, that doesn't detract from the fact that Ukrainians have done some horrible things throughout history. Now, Putin and his regime, they want to say, oh, well, let's not talk about the past. I've dealt with this, where people always want to bring up the past. They'll bring up something from 20 fucking years ago, but you can't bring up something that happened yesterday because it's in the past. Vladimir Putin is a human being, regardless of all of his faults and, of course, all of his stupidity, in my personal opinion. He is still a human being. So is Joe Biden. So is Donald Trump. I don't have to like them to know that if they were out here and we were in the middle of a blizzard and any of them were in danger of freezing to death, I'd give them a fucking blanket. Got a sleeping bag right here. It's right here that I got my computer on top of currently. Blanket. Actually, it's two blankets right there. I got a couple extra jackets if they're necessary. Anyway, this is a pretty long video, so I'm going to end it and let y'all go. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Be safe. Peace be the journey.